Hello, my name is Gregory Piccirilli, and this is my informative speech. There are many kinds of sports out there. Most parents try to get their kids involved in at least one of them so they have something to take up their extra time outside of school. I myself tried a couple different ones, such as baseball and tennis, but didn't really find one I enjoyed until I was about 12. That was when I discovered fencing. The basics of the sport are that you want to score a touch on your opponent until a certain score of touches is reached to decide the winner of the match. A face mask along with a jacket and glove on your sword hand are required. There are also some other equipment pieces like a plastron or underarm protector and plastic chest plate that are not required but help to reduce injury. The website rulesofsport.com goes over some of these basic equipment pieces and provides a lot more information. When first learning the sport, they will teach you a stance called the fencer's pose, where one foot is turned towards the opponent, dependent upon which is the hand that you hold the sword in, and the other foot is turned sideways, while your body is also turned sideways to make for a smaller target. Your offhand, or the hand you don't have the sword in, is supposed to be tucked behind your back. Moving in this position requires practice, but really does help with reducing the amount of target your opponent can hit. With more advanced fencers, they often break this position in order to move faster or score a touch more efficiently. It is up to your own discretion. When fencing, usually you'll use an electric sword that has wires in it to allow a machine to detect when you hit the opponent. It is possible to do it without the electric components, but it's much harder because then you have to have a referee to decide who is making a valid touch or not. And overall, there are 3 weapons that are used in the sport. They're called foil, saber, and epee. Traditionally, you're supposed to start with the foil. This is considered the easiest to learn as the only area that your touches actually count for points is in the torso area. The foil itself is a slimmer blade that only has a small hilt to protect your hand. When fencing foil, you also wear a special chest jacket called a lame that plugs into the score machine that allows the circuit to complete whenever a touch is scored with the weapon. And with this weapon, you can only use stabbing to get your touches. Slashing is not allowed and will not count as a valid touch. All the equipment that you will need to get started are usually rented out by fencing clubs to newcomers or can be purchased online. One good website to find a variety of equipment is absolutefencinggear.com. They sell swords as well as lames and other equipment that you will need. After you learn foil fencing, most teachers will then advance you to the saber weapon. With this weapon, you're allowed to score touches on the head, arms, and torso area. It also requires a special jacket, but for saber, it has the electrified area covering the arms, face mask, and the torso, with the exception being the back of the head where the face mask does not cover. This weapon differs from foil in that you have to slash with the blade in order to score a touch. You can't use any stabbing. The blade is thicker and the handguard covers more of the hand to protect it from the slashes. It is meant to progress your learning as you first learn stabbing with the foil and then slashing with the saber. And one other thing that's very important with foil fencing and saber fencing is the right-of-way rules. Basically, it is whoever advances towards their opponent first and establishes priority is the only one that's allowed to make a legitimate touch to score a point. So in order for the defender to score a touch, you must first make a block or force the person who advanced first to retreat, otherwise your touch will not count. For example, if fencer A advances first in a match and fencer B attacks at the same time and they both score a touch, only fencer A's touch will count because they had the right of way by establishing the attack first. This can get very complicated and heated in practice, as it can be difficult to decide who advanced first and what counted as a legitimate block. For this reason, there are always referees on call to make the final decision. An article I found that goes more in depth into this can be found on londonfencingclub.co.uk. It goes over the basics of the right-of-way rules again and provides better examples of how to establish priority. So, with learning all these other 2 weapons, it comes down to the final weapon called an epee, which translates to sword and is what most people would probably think of when they think of fencing. In this weapon, all of the body is considered a valid target, with the only exception still being the back of the head that the face mask does not cover. And also, the right-of-way rules of foil and saber do not apply. This weapon is about the same thickness as the saber and has a rounded bell guard around the hand to protect it more, but the hand is still considered a valid target. With epee, the tip of the sword actually has a mechanical button that depresses and registers with the score machine rather than an electrified jacket to complete the touch. Both slashing and stabbing are allowed. This can make for very interesting techniques to depress the button, as not very much force is needed. If you are able to bend the blade enough in a technique called a flick, you can even get the tip around the guard of their epee and hit the hand to depress the button, or flick the tip around their back or onto their foot. Nothing is off limits so long as the button gets activated. So, in conclusion, fencing is a sport that requires a lot of learning as you progress through the 3 weapons. These weapons are called foil, saber, and epee. Foil is generally where you'd start, as that only consists of stabbing and having the torso area being a valid target. Saber is the next progression, where you can only slash to get touches and have the arms, head, and torso to get touches on. These weapons both also have right-of-way rules, which only allow the person who establishes the attack first to score a valid touch. With the final weapon, called the epee, these right-of-way rules do not apply, and you can slash or stab during a touch. With epee, the goal is only to depress a button on the tip of the sword, which registers in the score machine rather than having an electrified jacket or torso area. Fencing is a sport that has been around for generations and is still popular for many people. I hope this has been interesting to learn about its basics.